You're on board the news track. Over 16,000 Indian students still remain stranded in war-torn Ukraine. India has mapped out its mission evacuation. Students have been asked to reach the Ukraine-Romania border. 2 flights are also on the way to Romania to bring back the first batch of Indians.
Around 16,000 Indians are caught right now in the middle of the war abroad. Students and other internationals stuck are waiting for their country to evacuate them.
इथे सध्या आमचे इंडियन ATM कार्ड्स चालत नाही आहेत. सुपरमार्केटमध्ये सामान सगळं संपत चाललेलं आहे. तर आमची एम्बेसीकडे हीच विनंती आहे की लवकरात लवकर आमच्यासाठी फ्लाइट्स अरेंज करून आम्हाला आमच्या देशी घेऊन जा.
इथं आमच्या सिटीमध्ये सध्या खूप जास्त पॅनिकचं एन्व्हायरमेंट क्रिएट झालं आहे. कारण की इथं जे सुपरमार्केट्स आहेत ते सगळे बंद होत चाललेत आणि त्यांच्यातलं जे किराणा आहे ते पण संपतही चाललं आहे.
5,000 kilometers away, their parents are worried sick with no power to help their kids.
मैं बस इतना ही मांगती हूँ कि मेरा बच्चा भारत वापस आ जाए और बस लड्डू कृपा से भगवान से भी ये प्रार्थना करती हूँ कि मेरा बेटा जल्द से जल्द आ जाए, क्योंकि कोई भी उनको सुविधाएं नहीं मिल रही है. कीव में फंसा हुआ है मेरा बेटा, पर कोई भी इंडिया की उससे नहीं, एमएससी इंडिया से कोई सुविधा नहीं मिल रही है उसको.
खाने के लिए थोड़ा बहुत सामान है और कुछ नहीं है उनके पास. पानी वगैरह कुछ भी नहीं है पीने के लिए, तो थोड़ा बहुत जो सामान है उसी से अपना गुजारा चला रहे हैं. 6-7 ये फ्रेंड्स हैं तो आपस में मिल बांट के उसको थोड़ा बहुत खा रहे हैं थोड़ा.
Ukrainian airspace remains closed, ending the possibility of an immediate airlift. The Indian government has advised its citizens in Ukraine to stay clear of the conflict and take refuge in bomb shelters. Indian missions in Hungary, Poland and other bordering countries have been instructed to help with evacuation by land. Despite government's assurances, the sense of panic prevails. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin, raising concerns of Indian national safety. The Indian Air Force is on a standby, ready to swoop in and evacuate our citizens as soon as possible. Bureau Report, India Today.
And I want to go across to Michael Kugelman at the Woodrow Wilson Center in DC. Mr. Kugelman, your sense of how this battle in America's eye is likely to play out next, and what could President Biden and the American administration possibly do? Because the world is watching, China is watching with an eye on Taiwan and seeing how President Biden and his government responds.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely poses a major test for President Biden. And, one of President Biden's initial goals when he became president was to restore alliances and restore U.S. global leadership. And that suffered some blows given what happened during the last few weeks of the Afghanistan withdrawal. So this is his opportunity. But I think the challenge is to try to bring together U.S. allies, particularly in NATO, to figure out the best course. As I had mentioned earlier, there's some differences, I think, between the U.S. and some of its NATO allies, some of its European allies, about how to approach the issue of sanctions. And that may apply to other areas as well. But I think at this point, as I had said earlier, all that we could expect from President Biden is to try to focus on the most harsh sanctions package possible that can get the buy-in of all of the key Western allies. That, I think, is an important first step. Beyond that, I think we need to look back at the issue of diplomacy, the possibilities there. Biden had agreed, in principle, to agree with Putin next week if there had not been an invasion. There was an invasion. But I think that should not be ruled out. You have had, as you noted, a number of key leaders speaking with Putin, including your prime minister, in recent days. We should not give that up, even if it appears that President Putin is emboldened and determined to keep fighting. Diplomatic options need to be kept up as well, just because I think that the U.S. does not really have, and the NATO alliance does not really have, many military options at this point, again, so long as the Russian war is limited to Ukraine.
Okay, thanks, Michael, for penciling in today. We'll come back to you tomorrow and over the next few days. I want to focus on what's happening inside Ukraine. The loss of freedom and trauma forced on the people of Ukraine has led to a global outcry against Russia. Citizens of several nations, including Russians, took to the streets, staging protests in solidarity with the Ukrainians, demanding no war. Here's a report.
These terrifying pictures have shaken the world. The loss of freedom and trauma forced on Ukrainians has led to a global cry against Russia. While Vladimir Putin remains defiant on this aggressive invasion, many in his country don't share his disregard for their liberty. As Russian forces claimed one victory after another in Ukraine, Muscovites took to the streets with banners saying no to war. Chanting crowds gathered in their thousands in central Moscow to hold protests. The anti-war protests quickly spread to the city of St. Petersburg, the crowds swelling by the hour, holding President Putin accountable for the misery innocent Ukrainians are facing. Putin tried to quell the growing cry against his presidency by deploying the police. What followed was a brutal crackdown on citizens by the security forces. Thousands of protesters were detained across several cities of Russia, more than 1,000 in Moscow alone. The chorus against Putin's war was picked up across many cities worldwide. Protesters gathered outside the Russian embassy in London. There were similar demonstrations in Paris, in Tokyo, Jerusalem, Sydney, and in multiple American cities from Los Angeles to New York. In democracies across the world, Ukraine is finding support in ordinary citizens. Bureau Report, India Today.
This is